For 2 decades, the duo of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos dominated the Philippines. Ferdinand Marcos was a young, charismatic politician, his wife a beauty queen when they rose to power in 1965.
A political dynasty now more remembered for lavish spending than triumphs. Ferdinand and Imelda are accused of pillaging up to $10 billion from the Philippines people. Imelda, known as the Iron Butterfly, would become a notorious jet-setting socialite and fashion icon, amassing hundreds of millions in jewels, fine art, real estate, and the infamous stash of thousands of shoes. Her travels so luxurious, she once reportedly spent $2,000 on chewing gum during a layover in San Francisco. She even forced an airplane departing Rome to make a U-turn because she forgot to buy cheese. The Marcos lifestyle, alleged corruption, and human rights violations now defining their legacy. But in the beginning, it did appear the power couple had good intentions. Marcos launched major infrastructure projects, making him very popular in parts of the country, such as his home province of Ilocos Norte.
The reformer gave way to the strong man. Shrewd and ruthless, Marcos declared martial law in 1972. Closed newspapers, jailed political foes, turned parliament into a rubber stamp.
During that era, even as millions of their people lived in poverty, the Marcoses enjoyed the good life.
Land, skyscrapers, and stock literally around the world. A personal fortune estimated at $5 billion. Nearly all of it siphoned from the Philippine treasury. U.S. presidents bankrolled Marcos because he was an ardent anti-communist who let the U.S. keep vital military bases in the Philippines.
In the midst of the Vietnam War, America was worried about the spread of communism in Asia.
That Marcos should have stepped down sooner than now. I mean, it's pathetic that we had a demented president for so long.
When the economy he and his cronies were accused of plundering collapsed, and when Marcos loyalists were widely believed to have gunned down opposition leader Senator Benigno Aquino, the president's legitimacy was finished. In 1983, just minutes after returning to the Philippines from a 3-year exile, Aquino was assassinated at the Manila airport. He was the political rival of President Marcos and spent years in prison on charges of subversion. Aquino's death, for which the Marcos regime was blamed, ignited the people power revolution that led to Ferdinand's downfall. In 1986, violence in the streets, accusations of cheating, and the dodgy human rights record led Marcos to call for a snap election. To the surprise of many in the Philippines and around the world, he lost to the late Senator Aquino's widow, Cory, a defeat Marcos was not willing to accept.
A nation took to the streets tonight to celebrate its victory. The dictator had fallen, the people conquered his palace. For a generation, it had been the forbidden city in the Philippines. Tonight, it was renamed Freedom Park. If you've ever wanted to know what a revolution looks like, feast your eyes on Manila tonight. As troops loyal to Marcos filed out of the palace, they were embraced as converts by the gathering crowd. There was pandemonium as word spread that the dictator was gone. There was bloodshed, very little bloodshed. The day that started with 2 presidents and 2 sides ended with a coming together that mingled prayer and patriotism, which tonight were the same thing. They waved their flags, they kissed their flags. The Virgin Mary was everywhere. They tore down the barbed wires surrounding the palace and fashioned it into crowns of thorns. The stately portraits of the old regime were replaced late tonight by Hollywood-type posters of the new leaders, the new Philippines, starring Corazon Aquino, who tonight spoke with the voice of her nation.
We are finally free, and we can be truly proud of the unprecedented way we achieved our freedom, with courage and with determination, and most important, in peace.
The revolution led to confusion here in Honolulu as the pictures of Ferdinand and Imelda still hung at the Philippine Consul General. Air travel was disrupted and families huddled around the TV set on edge.
When Ferdinand Marcos stepped off the plane at Hickam Air Force Base, he was a man without a country, cast adrift in a hostile world, desperately searching for an outstretched hand after fleeing a country he once ruled with an iron fist.
Marcos fled to Hawaii with his family and friends, landing on Oahu in February of 1986.
Only news people and security personnel waited for Marcos and his party this morning at Hickam Air Force Base. Nothing like the throngs of cheering supporters that have greeted the Filipino leader in his previous visits here. The 89 people traveling in the Marcos party made the trip from Guam in an Air Force C-141 that touched down just after 11 this morning. The official greeting party was small. Governor and Mrs. Ariyoshi and Commander of the Pacific Air Forces, General Robert Baisley, and his wife. A frail-looking Marcos needed some help deplaning, but once off, the 68-year-old president in exile was able to walk slowly by himself. There was a warm greeting between the Ariyoshis and the Marcoses, the welcome complete with leis. Later, Ariyoshi told reporters he found Marcos to be in good spirits, relaxed and hoping to get some rest here. He did not think Marcos was depressed or bitter.
By the time they were exiled, the Marcoses were estimated to have amassed assets worth anywhere between $5 to $10 billion. They are now famous for holding the Guinness World Record for the greatest robbery of a government. Much of that fortune is still missing, and that's led to a decades-long legal battle for Honolulu attorney Sherry Broder, who's still trying to recover the money.
People power becomes panic at the palace gate. A mad rush to get in and see what Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos left behind. Today was the day of the poor, Manila's slum dwellers summoned by President Corazon Aquino to see the extravagant lifestyle of the palace. Aquino has refused to live there.
It is really sad that the previous occupants neglected the needs of the Filipino people.
Filipinos who used to be kept blocks from the Marcos' private universe got a 20-minute kaleidoscope of unimaginable luxury.
Wow!
Including the former First Lady's 10-foot wide bed.
That's why a lot of people here in the Philippines are starving.
Fantastic.
Ray Reblora and his wife Sally often go to bed hungry, trying to live on their $17 a week income. Their first baby is due any day. Their palace, homemade out of scrap, is smaller than Imelda Marcos' bed. As far as Ray is concerned, the Marcoses belong in jail.
He can come back here in the Philippines to face what he do to the people of the Philippines.
Ray and Sally's wardrobe consists of a few extra shirts. They were stunned by Imelda's storeroom of 2,700 pairs of shoes and hundreds of designer gowns. The anger is compelling. So many people were trying to get in today that children were in danger of being crushed. The government said that from now on, passes will be issued to hold down the number of daily visitors to the bitter exhibit of Marcos memorabilia.
Cut off from their deep pockets and stuck in a diplomatic limbo, back in 1986, the Marcoses struggled to find a place to call home in Hawaii.
The former Philippine president arrived at 5577 Kalani Anaoli Highway around 8:30 last night. It was the first time Marcos had left Hickam Air Force Base since he and a party of about 90 arrived here from Manila 27 days ago. Last night's move was made with the assistance of Secret Service agents, U.S. Air Force personnel, and plainclothes officers of the Honolulu Police Department. And it didn't take very long for the first protesters to arrive. Honolulu attorney Eric Seitz and a friend showed up with protest signs less than an hour after the Marcoses moved in.
After many attempts to move to another country failed, the Marcoses remained in Hawaii until Ferdinand's death in 1989 at the age of 72.
Imelda Marcos was wrapping up an interview yesterday when she got the call. There was another crisis. Her husband's heart had stopped. Imelda went rushing to St. Francis Hospital. By the time she got to St. Francis, Ferdinand Marcos was on an internal pacemaker. His condition seemed to stabilize, raising the possibility that he would once again rally. But as the evening wore on, hope began to dim. Doctors said kidney and lung failure and a widespread infection added to the cardiac arrest that led to Marcos's death.
Following his death, President Corazon Aquino would not allow entry of Marcos's remains into the Philippines.
I've always considered only one thing, his wish, and the wish of every Filipino to be buried and led to rest in peace in his motherland.
So much has happened since the death of Ferdinand Marcos less than 24 hours ago. More recently, his body was made available for viewing as a deluge of reporters was allowed into the Marcos home. Leading the way, Imelda Marcos, still fighting for her husband's right to return to the Philippines.
How can you find this man dangerous man to security when he is now resting in peace forever?
Imelda Marcos now stands alone against criminal charges for allegedly looting her country of billions. She will vindicate herself, she says, once she resolves the long-standing issue of whether Marcos's body can return to his homeland.
This is so cruel, so inhuman, and so immoral.
Keep moving. Just like General MacArthur, Imelda Marcos has returned. She is fighting her own war for the hearts and minds of Filipinos.
We love Imelda. Yeah. Those people always.
The same Filipinos who threw her out of the country 5 years ago.
The Marcoses stole money from the Philippines?
Yeah, sure. He stole the money.
He stole the money? No.
And while she is delighted to face the crowds in the streets, she also must face charges in court.
Kung down daw sa New York, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.